Sorry to keep you waiting.
Everyone has a game that they wish had a sequel. Kid Icarus Uprising is one of these games. But instead of crying over it, in this video I want to talk with you about this game that I only had the chance to play 13 years later. How fun this game is, how ahead of its time it was, how unique, and how it makes me laugh every time I play it. The third-person shooter with real shooter sections video game Kid Icarus Uprising was created by Project Sora and released by Nintendo for the Nintendo 3DS in 2012. It is the third entry in the Kid Icarus series, the first to be distributed globally since the 1986 original NES game, and the first since Kid Icarus of Myths and Monsters in 1991. Additionally, it is the sole video game produced by Project Sora prior to its closure in the middle of 2012. Goodbye, Project Sora. You will not be remembered at all, unfortunately. Kid Icarus was supposed to be the first launch title for the Nintendo 3DS system, but due to its delay and development process, ended up launching after the console release, making the boring 3DS lineup even more boring. But after the Kid Icarus release, the 3DS had a bump in his life. Nintendo dropped the hardware price and launched Kid Icarus, and then the console started to be the banger that we remember, with Kid Icarus being one of the pinnacles of that year, beneath the Angry Birds trilogy and Hotel Transylvania for the 3DS, of course. Kid Icarus Uprising was entirely written by Sakurai himself, the man behind Smash Bros. And Kirby Air Riders. His main focus as a writer was to fix a problem he saw in the industry, games that didn't mix gameplay with storytelling in a balanced way. Because of this, the majority of the plot's dialogue was integrated into gameplay rather than being as a standalone cutscenes. The cutscenes that were there were as brief as feasible. We'll dive into this game from 3 layers of depth. For that, let me present you a body analogy. First, we delve inside the skin of the game that keeps everything from pulling organs away, the story. Then we are going to see what gives life to every organ of this body, the blood, the music, and the visuals of the game. And finally, we'll go to its heart, the core of this game, the gameplay. Stick with me until the end, not just to watch a game review, but to understand more about the development process, Sakurai's philosophy of making games, and the reason why some music differs from others in style without taking your attention away. And finally, the gameplay that not only connects everything else, but mixes them with wonderfulness. Take a seat, prepare a sandwich for yourself, a bread with a mono eye and a leg from a bokoblin will serve you just fine. If you want to watch one topic before another, feel free to click on the chapter you want from the timeline. Kid Icarus Uprising takes place in a setting partly based on Greek mythology, 25 years after the events of the original game. At the end of the original game, Pete defeated Medusa in an old-fashioned video game-style way, using the 3 sacred treasures, the Mirror Shield, the Arrow of Light, and the Wings of Pegasus that he received from Palutena, who at the time was only a silent character playing the role of the kidnapped girl. In the Uprising, Pete, an angel serving the goddess of light, Palutena, is assigned missions against Medusa, the goddess of darkness, who threatens to destroy humanity and who came back in a mysterious way. Together, because Pete can't fly on his own and needs aid to fly for 5 minutes straight, they plan to stop her horrendous comeback. Actually, there are 2 plotline arcs in the plot. The first is about the fight against Medusa and her resurgent henchmen, and the second is about the gods Hades and Viridi's threat to humanity. Along the way, Pete must battle all of the classic monsters and bosses from the first game. In one of those fights, Pete smashes the Mirror of Truth. During the process, the mirror creates a doppelganger known as Dark Pete. Dark Pete was written as a mirror image of Pete, not as an evil twin. He is thought to reflect Pete's suppressed emotions. Dark Pete is far more serious than his laughing counterpart, with a drier sense of humor. He is also more arrogant, claiming to be the original Pete. Furthermore, Dark Pete is more aggressive and pragmatic than Pete, frequently striking opponents when their guard is down. During the second half of the story, Pete will meet a slew of new people and foes in the Kid Icarus universe. Minor spoiler alert, including the true enemy, Hades. But we have other characters as well, like the mercenary Magnus, who is a human swordsman and one of the few mortals who can fight the underworld army on his own. He's strong, skilled, and more like a lone wolf who has a dry sense of humor, but can be sarcastic and has a no-nonsense attitude. While not a god or angel, Magnus earns the respect of both Pete and Palutena through his actions and bravery. Viridi is the goddess of nature. Fiercely passionate about protecting the natural world, she's not afraid to fight against humans, gods, or anyone she sees as a threat to nature. She's hot-headed, impulsive, blunt, sarcastic, and often mocking, which can make her a really immature character, but shows real depth and growth. Maybe she's my favorite character in this game. Finally, the story mode is divided into 25 chapters, one for each stage, with 15 to 20 minutes for each one of them, divided by aerial battles, ground battles, and boss battles that we will talk about later in the gameplay section. Sakurai wrote everything, so he was able to create a tale that jibed with the gameplay's style and flow. The characters' personalities and roles were impacted by their roles in the game, as well as the game's structure. Sakurai avoided frequently explaining things to another writer by writing the script himself. He also discovered that fine-tuning was significantly easier as a result. Although the Greek mythology from the original game was retained, the Uprising scenario was not directly influenced by the mythology. In addition, Sakurai also wanted to make sure that the game's Greek influence did not stray in the same direction as the God of War series. He didn't want to show a simple good versus evil situation in the main story. Instead, he had the different groups fight because they had different opinions, not because they wanted to hurt each other. Instead of having overtly malevolent intent, he had different factions clash over divergent viewpoints, and their overlapping conflicts caused the players to experience ever-increasing levels of chaos. He also had a particular philosophy about video games narrative. As a player, as someone who's been playing games for a long time, the stories that get told in video games are honestly irksome to me pretty often. For example, games that take forever to get through the intro and won't let you start playing, or games that go through the trouble of being fully voiced and wind up having their tempo all messed up as a result. I just want to enjoy the game, and I think I'm just intolerant of aspects that blocks that enjoyment. I can enjoy a story in any other form of media. I just want the game to let me play it already. Because of this, Sakurai thinks balance is the key, and his main goal with Uprising was to bring balance to the game. A game's story absolutely needs to match the content and the gameplay. In an ideal world, we could take advantage of this to provide new story developments that you will never be able to see in other media. I get Sakurai's viewpoint, but I don't think that should be the main viewpoint. It's more like Nintendo's vision of games, not Sony's or other narrative-driven focused studios. But because of his type of vision, we have the games we have from him. But I couldn't spend my entire life just playing Smash Bros. Or games focused solely on gameplay. Balance is the key, but sometimes I do like to play storytelling games like Telltale games such as The Walking Dead, or narratives like The Last of Us and Pentiment, which is a medieval point-and-click game that I loved so much that I made a full review in this channel. I love these gameplay-focused games, like Kid Icarus and even Souls games, but what really catches me majorly in video games is narrative-driven. It's my favorite type of game and what catches my attention and my passion for playing video games. Sure, games like Ocarina of Time also did this with me when I was a kid, but games like Uncharted 4, God of War, and Ragnarok were the ones that pushed me harder. Balance is the key, right? That's why, for me, my favorite games are Metal Gear Solid 4, a totally narrative-driven game, and Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Games that have a perspective much closer to the Sakurai viewpoint. What are your visions about gaming? Which type of game makes you love games even more? For me, I disagree that gameplay should always be the main core of one game or the reason you should play this game. This depends on the type of game. Good gameplay with a great story is always the best for me, but I do understand what Sakurai was seeking. Play the game that has a connection with the narrative of its game. But okay, is the story any good? 100%. It's fun and it has a magic touch on it. The characters are awesome, the plot twists are cool, and the jokes are on point, since the team that translated the game from Japanese to English took care of this part. The character's development actually has a good amount of depth in their development. I sure hope Sakurai would give us another game with a story again, because he actually managed to do a cheerful tale with identity. If you pay attention to the dialogues during the gameplay, you'll surely have some fun. The ending of this game is epic, giving us an awesome sensation of mission completeness and sadness because you may not see these characters again, except if you want to punch their face in Smash Bros, of course. But apart from that, this story will surely stay with me. I wish we had more from this game, but I'm satisfied with what we got. Nintendo games like Skyward Sword and Kid Icarus give me the feeling of purity in almost every aspect of them. Not because Kid Icarus doesn't have double-sensed jokes, but because it's almost like we had a good smell essence from these games that only these games have. Another quote I disagree with, this one is a public opinion and not from Sakurai himself, is "Only gameplay matters. not story. And graphics don't matter if the gameplay is awesome. Because in Kid Icarus, a game where the heart is the gameplay, the visuals and graphical effects do matter. Which led us to the second topic, the blood of this body. The 3D effect was a huge thing back then, and this game shows it better than 80% of the 3DS game library. We have some games that don't use the 3D effect at all, and we have some games that use them in a weird way, like New Super Mario Bros. 2, where everything except Mario, enemies and platforms is blurred. Seriously, why would you turn the 3D effect on just to blur all the background and not see any of the details and charisma of the scenarios? Epic use of your gimmick, Nintendo. In Kid Icarus, though, we have an interesting approach even in comparison to later titles. This game must be played in 3D mode, and if you can, it must be played on a new 3DS system because the camera follows your eye, so you won't miss anything. That's the system I use it, and I'm glad for it. The game has great graphics, and the small screen makes them even charmier. Do not take YouTube for this. Play it by yourself because these games look amazing on the original console. The 3DS for me is one of the few consoles that if you emulate it, you won't have the best experience even with 4K resolution and 100 FPS. Of course, it's worth it to play anywhere you can, even on your cell phone, but to me the best way to play is on the handheld. But graphics weren't really the thing Sakurai was aiming for. In fact, he divided Kid Icarus into 3 pillars. The cheerful tale that we already talked about, the difficulty that we will talk about, and the music of the game. The second pillar of this game is definitely the music. Without music, there's no video game. Nintendo games are known for their music and their eccentric way to escape royalties. That's why they used cartridges instead of DVDs in the 90s. That's why they developed their own media on GameCube to still not have to pay for DVDs. And that's why they have their own music app to not pay royalties. They mix their geniality with their eccentricism, to say it in good words. In Kid Icarus, this is no exception. The music here is the blood that flows from its heart. Call it gameplay. To make the body, call it story, alive. It isn't just good or great music, it's atemporal. It is still used in Smash Bros. Ultimate on the Switch, such as the whole visual of the main menu. Kid Icarus Uprising is more influential than you think. The music included synthesized recordings, live symphonic music, and songs that blended the two styles. Early on, it was recognized that one of the main objectives was to have the air battle music blend in with the dialogue and action on the screen. Even though I think the music is fantastic, another fantastic aspect is this point of blending with the gameplay and dialogues. Doing this without taking our attention away but still immersing you inside the game is a brilliant way to do things. Like Zelda Breath of the Wild does, you feel you're playing this game inside this world because of the music, even though you don't notice the music all the time. But different from Zelda, here you can listen to the music and enjoy the emotions it passes to you, because the music is more noticeable in boss fights. Some tracks have some interesting facts surrounding their composition, like Dark Peach's theme that was produced with Western gun duos in mind, making heavy use of the acoustic guitar to give it a Spanish flavor. The boss theme was designed to make the music pleasant and encouraging, in contrast to the more common oppressive boss themes featured in games. Hades' Infernal theme, which combined choral, circus, and violent elements to express Hades' conflicting attributes and distinguish him from Medusa to be more terrifying. Listen to it a bit. The story is cool, the music is cool, but what about what really matters in this game? Is the gameplay cool too? 100% bro, 100%. Finally! Kept you waiting, huh? The heart and soul of Kid Icarus Uprising. This game is really fun, and the structure of the gameplay is: start as an aerial rail shooter for a few minutes, then go to ground battles and a bit of exploration, and then finally finish the phases with a boss fight. Alternate between longer range attacks and melee combos. Doing it for 25 chapters, aiming for 15 to 20 minutes for each one, and that's the structure. That being the backbone doesn't exclude the creative part to work, because this game is creative. creative. Within these 15 minutes you have a blow of 3D effect, an awesome spaceship-like game, great ground combat with intensity, and dialogues that keep you going through the sequences by not paying that much attention to the time you're playing the game because it's really fun. You have different weapons to use that provide diverse strategic possibilities that can go from a bow to claws and shotguns, a holding machine gun, and even a robot to have some fun while feeling invincible. And of course, an Angel Mobile, because why not? They focused on maintaining, according to them, the ridiculous designs from the original game. This approach, as noted by Sakurai, contrasted sharply with the serious or green character storylines found in the vast majority of video games. That being said, this game has an enemy that turns you into a tempura and eats you with his favorite sauce, wild. Killing them using the stylus and using the stylus to move the camera was an idea to solve two major problems. First, the newer gamer's initial barrier. The original Kid Icarus was infamous for its difficulty, but Sakurai intended to change that so that the casual gamers could still enjoy Uprising. As a result, the Fiend's Cauldron was designed as a user-controlled method of adjusting difficulty and allowing players to challenge themselves by wagering resources against their performance. The difficulty ranges from the very easy 0.0 to the highly difficult 9.0, but the difficulty of the original game wasn't discarded. In fact, Sakurai chose the difficulty to be one of the three pillars of the game. While the game has fast-paced action and a high difficulty level, the control mechanism was supposed to be easy. Sakurai had seen that equivalent console games used all of the buttons on a console's controller, creating a barrier for first-time gamers. To make the game more accessible for novices, while maintaining gameplay depth, the developers merged the three basic controls with the game's framework. The circle pad controls the character, the stylus aim the camera, and the L button is used to attack. To make it simpler, I activated the auto attack to not have to press the L button all the time. Second, the stereoscopic 3D effect. While similar touch-based targeting was previously being employed for first-person shooters on the Nintendo DS like Call of Duty titles and even Metroid Other M, Sakurai was displeased with the experience, describing it as like trying to steer with oars. The team was able to build a more responsive experience similar to a computer mouse using the 3DS touchscreen, devising a mechanism of flicking the styles to alter camera and character direction. The developers also attempted to address the inherent problem of moving the character and camera while stereoscopic 3D was active. Reminds me a bit of the Wii concept for game design, which isn't a surprise since this game was originally developed with the Wii hardware in mind, since the 3DS hadn't had a prototype for them to work with. But this is a story I'll tell in another video talking about the whole development of this game. Doing everything in a few minutes and throwing a lot of information, dopamine injections and goofy puns isn't just a hella game design, but in theory it's a perfect model for a handheld experience. But it has some problems. Being a perfect handheld experience in theory doesn't make a perfect experience in practice. Your hands will cramp up a bit. Even if you play for 30 minutes, you might get the sensation of discomfort on the palm of your hand. I know they launched the game with a 3DS stand, but first, it isn't that easy to find nowadays, which is sad because this type of video game accessory tends to alter the perception of the game in the future. Playing with it today isn't the same as playing it back then when you had the accessories. Second, I don't think they work in the later 3DS models, especially in the new 3DS, which was the one I played this game on. Third, not having an option to utilize the Circle Pad Pro or the second stick is definitely a nail for the game. I don't get why they didn't update the game to just fit this gimmick. It could have helped with the hand cramping. Having excellent dialogues interactions that balance story with gameplay in real time, even though it's great, can make you confused sometimes. Sure, you can read the dialogues later and even put them in the bottom screen to help you, but I think it would be nice to adjust this a bit more before the release of the game. I can't suggest what they should have done, since I'm not a game designer myself, but this is still a bad point of the game because sometimes I had to pay so much attention to the game because of the difficulty that I forgot to listen to the dialogues. Could I lower the difficulty to pay attention to the dialogues? Yes, I could, but the game wouldn't be this fun for me if it was easier. Overall, despite the criticism, I think he succeeded in the objective to mix the gameplay with the story and the character's development. The game is really fluid, beautiful, and well executed. I'd love to see a sequel for this game, and after a few years, I'll go back to play it again because it's fun. Because of Sakurai's decision to make everything within the few minutes structure, this game works perfectly for the player to just grab the 3DS from their pocket and start playing before getting robbed in some random street. Like the video? That's awesome. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment because I love interactions in the comments. Like I said, I pretend to do a video focused only on the development of this game, with all the information that I found but couldn't use for a personal review video like this. I'm Ricouts, and my channel is about connecting different people's experiences through video games, because despite all of our differences, video games can connect us. I hope I will see you next time. Thanks for watching, and God bless you.